Over the last few days, I've traveled across 5 countries in Europe and I've only had to spend 100 euros traveling across those 5 countries. It's actually mind-blowing when you think about it, because just about 4 years ago, as to when I'm making this video, I decided to start traveling. So I didn't have an international passport prior, so I decided to get an international passport. And I made that first trip outside of my country. At that point, I was living in Nigeria, and my first trip was to Dubai. So when I made this trip to Dubai, it was really like I spent thousands of dollars to make that trip. And now I've been to about 20 countries plus over just like 4 year period. As a matter of fact, I'm almost done exhausting all the pages of my passport, as you will see here. Besides that, one of the things I told myself was I was trying to travel across Europe well before my passport expires. Now I have just about 6 months left in my passport, and that's why I decided to take on this trip. But then I currently live in Canada. Like I said, my own country is Nigeria. So in Nigeria, flight tickets are quite expensive. Like, I mean, a one-way ticket could cost as much as like $100. Like, even within the country, like a 1 hour flight could cost that much. So, and even in Canada, like I've had to travel between Ottawa, where I live, down to Calgary, which is in another province, and it cost about $400 and something. So I thought about it. They said Europe is really cheap to travel across. Let me try it. So I decided to give it a shot. So I left Canada on Saturday last week. So I flew from Montreal airport, because like there are not so many international flights from Ottawa airport where I live. So I flew down to, so I took the train down to Montreal, and then from Montreal I flew down to London. Now that's an expensive flight, quite alright. That ticket cost about $900 on British Airways, which isn't so bad if you think about it, for like a 7-hour flight, 6 hours 40 minutes thereabouts to London. So now I would be calculating the cost of my trip off from London and not like from Canada, because that's a long haul flight. Now I got to London and then I had a lot of fun. So I decided I was really going to try to cut my cost and just make it as cheap as possible and see how I could really travel across Europe with the lowest possible budget. So I spent the day in London, which was on Sunday, and then I decided I was going to fly down to Germany on Monday. So now the cost of my flight between London to Dortmund, because I flew to Dortmund in Germany, was 30 euros. Now that means I've spent just 30 euros on my flight, right? So I spent 30 euros on Ryanair. Now, when you're flying Ryanair, you have a lot of limitations as opposed to maybe like flying the big carrier. So, for example, you can pick your seats, you can carry like the big bags, you just have to like carry a small bag and all of those things. But that's all right. It's not bad for like the price, right? So 30 euros gone flying. So I'm just going to be noting these things down so that we do the overall cost together, right, at the end of this video. So 30 euros flying from London to Dortmund. Now, there's still some other costs that we'll talk about, but let's still talk about the cost of the trip itself. So now, when I arrived in Dortmund, I stayed with my partner, so obviously no accommodation cost incurred. So I decided that I was going to go. So I spent about 2 days in Germany. I decided I was going to go down to the Netherlands from Germany. So I took the train from Dortmund to Düsseldorf, where we got a Flixbus ticket. So now we took the Flixbus from Düsseldorf to Amsterdam, and the trip cost just about 15 euros for one person on Flixbus from Düsseldorf to Amsterdam in Netherlands. Now we've gone from England, London in England, down to Dortmund in Germany, and now from Dortmund in Germany down to Amsterdam in Netherlands. Right now we are in country 3. Now I spent 15 euros to get to country 3. Now from Netherlands, which is like Amsterdam, then I got another bus from Amsterdam to Brussels, and this bus cost, guess how much? Just guess how much this bus actually cost. This bus cost just about 9 euros, right? So spent 9 euros, 9 euros from Amsterdam to Brussels in Belgium. So from Amsterdam to Brussels in Belgium cost just 9 euros. And like, I mean, that's actually mind-blowing, because sometimes I actually sit down to think about it, that this business is actually profitable, because it doesn't make any sense that you carry a passenger and you charge them 9 euros to travel across like countries. Doesn't seem to make sense to me, but that's what it is. So now 9 euros from Netherlands to Belgium. Now from Belgium, which is in Brussels, we're heading down to Luxembourg. So now that would cost just about 15 euros for one person, right? So 15 euros for one person, 15 euros for one person between Brussels and Luxembourg, right? Now, from Luxembourg, we're heading back to Germany, and that's going to cost another 14, let's say 15 euro for one person again. That's like the cost of traveling across these countries. Now, we're back to Germany. So from Germany, there's now another trip going to Africa, which is like in Morocco. I'm not going to talk about that. I'm just going to talk about like traveling across Europe and how cheap it is. Now, that means traveling from London to Amsterdam, from Amsterdam to Brussels, from Brussels to Luxembourg, and from Luxembourg back to Germany. That's like traveling across a total of 5 countries. Cost a total of 30 plus 30, that's 60, 60 plus 15, that's 75, 75 plus 9, that's going to be a total of, my math is bad. So that's going to be about, let's say $85, right? That's the cost of traveling across 5 countries in Europe. Like, it's actually just mind-blowing and insane because, you know, when we talk on social media and tell people like, oh, traveling is great, it expands your mind, people are like, oh, I can't afford it, it's so expensive. And that's one of the reasons why I decided to really undertake this journey and see, is it really expensive to travel, or people don't just want to make that leap, or they're just trying to make excuses, or they've really not just tried and they're just buying what other people are telling them, because that's always a problem. A lot of people actually don't try out things themselves. They just fly with what other people tell them and they're like, oh, travel is so expensive, I can't afford it, and all those kind of things. But when you think about it, like 85 euros traveling across 5 countries, like even the poor of the poor can afford that. So why exactly aren't you traveling yet? But it doesn't really end there. Traveling can get quite expensive. So now, when we arrived in Europe, of course, you have to stay in like accommodations, hotels. So I thought about it. What's the best way to get around these accommodations and get the cheapest deal? So like I told you, when I flew into London, I really took it upon myself to try to cut costs. So I stayed with my friend in London. So that means accommodation cost in London, 0. So that means I didn't have to spend anything. Now from London to Dortmund in Germany, when I got to Germany, I was with my partner as well. So that means accommodation cost in Germany, 0. Now, from Germany to Amsterdam, I know you're probably thinking, do I have people everywhere and all of those kind of things? I actually don't have people everywhere. So when we got to Amsterdam, we had to stay in a hotel. So typically, there are lots of accommodation options that you could use, maybe either on booking.com, Expedia, Airbnb, and the likes. But to be honest, accommodation in Europe is freaking expensive. Like, it's not cheap. And I think that's where they're making up for their money. It doesn't seem to make sense, but it is what it is. So I'm just going to raise my camera up a little bit, right? Okay, so now we got to the cost of accommodation, and that's where things began to go south. So typically, if I'm staying with a friend, I'm actually more comfortable staying there without expecting anything. But if I'm staying in, let's say, a hotel, and I stay in a certain type of hotel, like at least I expect like the bare minimum. But the problem is I've stayed in some hotels that are not so great. So a lot of times I just try to go for like at least some hotels that have names. So that way it's a bit more expensive, but at the same time, I get like very, 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 very good quality out of this. So let's talk about the cost of the hotels across the strip, right? To be honest, they are not still very expensive. Even if like you're not earning so much, it's still something you can try out. So like I told you, I'm making this trip. It's not like I'm trying to spend 1 week in each country. I'm just trying to spend just about 2 days in each country. So I spend 2 days in, like 1 day in London, 2 days in Germany, 2 days in Belgium, 2 days in Netherlands, 2 days in Luxembourg, and then back to Germany. So it's just like 2 days, 2 days, 2 days across each country, nothing crazy. So I'll be saying this cost in Canadian dollars. So because that's like the currency I spend, right? So the cost of the hotel in Amsterdam for 2 nights was just $272. So now if you do the math and add that to whatever we had on ground, we'll come back to do the total math, right? So we'll spend just about $272 on the hotel in Amsterdam, and like it's a Radisson hotel. So typically I know how to find good deals, but like $272 for 2 nights in a Radisson, not bad. So now, from Radisson in Amsterdam, because like I told you, the other places have been free, then I got a very good deal on Expedia, where which actually like gave me the opportunity to stay at a Marriott hotel in Brussels. Like, this hotel is literally just like very close to NATO headquarters. Like, it's a very, very prime area, like lots of great companies. And the total money paid for this was just 282 Canadian dollars for 2 nights in Brussels. Like, not bad at all if you think about it. And then from there, now there's like the accommodation in Luxembourg. Now, Luxembourg is very, very expensive. Like, that has to be one of the most expensive countries I've seen. Like, everything in Luxembourg is so, so expensive. Like, I heard it's like the richest country in Europe. So what do you expect? Quite expensive. 2 nights in Luxembourg cost about $330. And then from Luxembourg back to Germany, which is technically free accommodation, right? So when you think about it and do all of the total costs and everything, let's do the math together. So the whole cost of everything will come down to 30 euros on like the flight from London to Dortmund in Germany, and 15 euros from Germany to Netherlands, 9 euros from Netherlands to Belgium, 15 euros from Belgium to Luxembourg, 15 euro back from Luxembourg to Germany, and then 272 euros on the accommodation in Amsterdam, 282 dollars on the accommodation in in Brussels, and then 330 dollars. Sorry, I'm tending to mix up the currency. 330 Canadian dollars on the accommodation in Luxembourg. So everything comes down to $968. So that's about, let's say all things being equal, 1,000 Canadian dollars. Think about it, like, that's the cost of going to like 5 countries, seeing new places. Like, it's actually mind-blowing that the cost of this whole trip going across 5 countries in the span of about 2 weeks, in fact less than 2 weeks, is much more cheaper than the cost of my first flight from Lagos, Nigeria to Dubai. In fact, the cost of this whole trip is just around the cost of my flight from Montreal to London. So why exactly, especially if you're someone who lives in Europe, why exactly aren't you traveling? And even if you live outside Europe, whether it's Africa, whether it's North America like myself, like, it's just still something that you should try to do once in a lifetime. Like, it's not something you should do every time, but like, if you have the money, like, why not? Like, you could even pretty much use your credit card. Like, it's just $1,000, and then like, if you have a credit card like the one I have, which is like with Scotiabank, like, it pretty much will allow you even break down this cost with like as low as maybe 3% interest rate, or maybe like 5% interest rate. Like, that's pretty good, right? And you get to see, like, it's a once in a lifetime thing, like 5 countries at the price of 1. Like, but now we still have a lot of other costs that now comes with like this whole trip, which is like the cost of transportation within those countries. Now, remember the whole cost, the whole money spent on this trip so far, even from like Canada down to all of those 5 countries, is just about 2,000 Canadian dollars in total. Not a lot of money if you think about it. But now, the cost of transportation. Now, I'm not going to add the cost of feeding because that's a bit dicey. Like, I probably eat a lot, so I don't want to talk about that. But the cost of like transportation. So London seems to be like the most expensive, like when it comes to transportation. I know that the train I took from London, or like one of the train stations in London, just to Stansted, where I flew to Dortmund, cost about 50 Canadian dollars. Just one train. That's actually absolutely ridiculous, because that train was just for like 1 hour, like $50. And then I know I went to the stadium in London and I lost a lot of other things. Like, let's say all the cost of transportation in London came down to 100 Canadian dollars. And then from when I came to Germany, the whole cost of transportation in Germany is just 49 euros. So once you get like a 49 euro ticket, I don't know, like with that, you could actually travel across Germany, like with their local transit network for just 49 euros. So if you do the maths, maybe let's say 80 Canadian dollars as well. So that's like 180. And then in each country, because of like a lot of walk around, maybe like $20. In fact, in Amsterdam, I know it was just about $10 for like a day ticket. I know it was 9 euros. So let's say maybe like $15 for like each country per day. So like 15. So all the cost of transportation probably comes down to like maybe $250. So with everything excluding cost of feeding, if you don't eat too much, like you probably spend maybe like $3,000 traveling across all of those countries in like this 2-week period. And if you think about it, like for a once in a lifetime trip, it's totally worth it. So I recommend that you try this out. And like I said, traveling across Europe is pretty easy. All you need to do is get one single visa, which is called the Schengen visa. Pretty easy to get, easy to apply. I already made a video about that, so you should check that out. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And of course, if you want to see my other travel videos, leave in the comments and I would be happy to share them with you. And yeah. Oh yeah, I also made a video about like applying for a UK visa. If you want to check that out as well, like check the link like after this video and you would find details to that as well. So don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, share with your friends who are looking for that inspiration to travel, who think it's expensive to travel, and let them know that it's actually possible. You don't have to break the bank, you don't have to take a loan, you don't have to be rich to travel. Like it's just something anyone can do on a budget. Of course, it could get pretty expensive flying, maybe business class and all of those other things. But like if you're doing on a budget like I decided to do on this trip, then it is freaking cheap. And even like a lot of the bus rides, I know like oh, I don't want to sit on a bus for that long. Like the bus from Germany to Netherlands was just about 2 hours 30 minutes. From Netherlands to Brussels, just about 2 hours 30 minutes. From Brussels to Luxembourg, just about 2 hours 30 minutes. So it's nothing outrageous. It's nothing ridiculous. It's not like you have to sleep on the bus for like 10 hours, like 5 hours. Pretty easy. You don't have to travel with the trains. The trains are like more expensive. So yeah, I hope this video gives you that motivation to take that bold step. Actually take that trip. Like it's gonna be mind-blowing, change your life, and then actually enjoy life. So probably just check my channel. You probably find other videos that are related to this trip. And then I would also be making a trip to Morocco from Germany to Morocco, and I would document that as well, the cost, everything associated, and how you can also like visit multiple countries on one trip and get the best out of it. All right, see you in the next video. Bye.